Welcome to Alaska Weather. This is Holloway with the National Weather Service for February 2nd, 2020. Couple options for you to further refine your weather search and look into the watch warnings and advisories we have out. 1-800 number takes you through a menu system, and weather.gov/Alaska on the webpage. Lastly, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at the email list at the bottom of the page. For hazardous weather, we do have the winter chill warning for that interior location out until 6 a.m. on Wednesday. That northwest region and Ukqiavik region as well, that's going to be a wind chill warning, and that's going to be out until 6 a.m. on Thursday. Also, we have down there in the southwest Bristol Bay region, we have a winter weather advisory out until 9 p.m. this evening. And lastly, the Panhandle is going to be upgrading their watch that's currently out to advisories and warnings, and those will be out in basically from Wednesday into Thursday, so please check those out. On the satellite image, you can see lots of weather moving through the southwest Bristol Bay region and up through the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, we have some fog, ice fog along the Arctic coast and portions of the interior. And we also have some rain showers south of Kodiak Island along a boundary. And we also have a weak system there pulling into the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians. And lastly, there's the next system coming into the western Aleutians out there. We'll be watching that system, and it crosses the Bering Sea over the next couple days. So what does this look like on the surface chart? So weakening occluded boundary there in the Bristol Bay region into the southwest with moderate to light snow showers out there. And a triple point just south of Kodiak Island, 998 millibar low there with rain showers further south. We also have some blowing snow across the southeast interior up through the northwest coast, and freezing fog, ice fog along the Arctic coast and in portions of the interior. And lastly, there's that system pulling into the western Aleutians. We'll be watching that over the next couple days. And we can see that system pulls further east across south central on tonight. For tonight's weather, that triple point now moving into the Gulf region, 1,001 millibar low there. Scattered snow showers around that system and in through the southwest and out through the YK Delta and into St. Lawrence Island with some snow showers out there. Otherwise, that fog continues along the north slope and portions of the eastern interior. And that system wraps up over Russia and included front out through the western Bering Sea with mixed precipitation from rain and snow showers associated with that system. For Wednesday's weather, there's the occluded front that approaches the Panhandle with moderate snow showers in portions of that area. Otherwise, some snow showers scattered through much of the mainland, and blowing snow through the Seward Peninsula and northwest coast region. Otherwise, some fog, ice fog along the north slope, and lastly a triple point forming in the central Bering, 991 millibar low there with mixed precipitation from snow and rain showers as you head into the southern side of the central Aleutians. For Thursday's weather, that low passes through the Panhandle, lingering snow showers down there, lingering snow showers across the southern mainland, and blowing snow across much of the northern interior and northwest coast. Otherwise, that low in the Bering now 1,002 millibar low there with mixed precipitation from snow and rain associated with that system. Otherwise, another system looks to be pulling into the Gulf, 1,018 millibar low there with a weak warm front. For low temperatures Wednesday morning, we're looking at Ketchikan 31, 31 in Sitka, 16 in Juneau, 3 in Anchorage, -8 in Talkeetna, King Salmon 19, Kodiak 31, and 17 in McGrath. For the North Slope region, -41 in Kaktovik, Ukqiavik -34, -14 at Point Hope, -45 in Anaktuvik Pass, -45 in Eagle. Looks like those two will tie for the overnight low. -33 in Fairbanks, -24 in Galena, -4 in Nome. Down through the southwest, 10 in Bethel, 14 in Dillingham, 26 in Cold Bay, Dutch Harbor 33, 29 in Shemya, 29 in St. Paul. Back down through Gulf region for high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, 37 in Ketchikan, 35 in Sitka, 28 in Juneau, 25 in Valdez, 16 in Anchorage, 14 in Talkeetna, 28 in King Salmon, 38 in Kodiak, and 27 in Seward. For the North Slope region Wednesday afternoon, -30 in Kaktovik, -24 in Ukqiavik, Point Hope -12, -37 in Anaktuvik Pass, -25 in Fort Yukon, -18 in Fairbanks, -16 in Galena, -20 in Tanana, -3 in Nome. Down to the southwest, high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, 24 in Bethel, 24 in Dillingham, 35 in Cold Bay, 38 in Dutch Harbor, 34 in Shemya, 35 in St. Paul. Low temperatures Thursday morning for the Gulf region, 36 in Ketchikan, 34 in Sitka, 27 in Juneau, 16 in Haines, 14 in Valdez, 7 in Anchorage, -4 in Talkeetna, 14 in King Salmon, 28 in Kodiak, -25 in McGrath. For the North Slope, low temperatures Thursday morning, -37 in Kaktovik, -28 in Ukqiavik, -18 in Point Hope, -42 in Anaktuvik Pass. Looks like they'll get the overnight low for the state. And then -34 in Fort Yukon, -28 in Fairbanks, -31 in Tanna, -31 in Galena as well, -15 in Nome, and -10 in Savuga. For low temperatures down to the southwest Thursday morning, looking at 5 in Bethel, 12 in Dillingham, 26 in Cold Bay, 34 in Dutch Harbor, 35 in Shemya, 30 in St. Paul. Back down through the Gulf region for Thursday afternoon, 41 in Ketchikan, 43 in Sitka, 36 in Juneau, 36 in Yakutat, 15 in Anchorage, 13 in Talkeetna. Warms up a little bit around the region. 23 in King Salmon, 37 in Kodiak, and 2 in McGrath. Up through the North Slope and interior, -20 in Kaktovik, -18 in Ukqiavik, -3 in Point Hope, -20 in Anaktuvik Pass, -23 in Fort Yukon, -9 in Fairbanks, -7 in Galena, 12 in Nome. Down through the southwest, 8 in Antioch, 16 in Bethel, 20 in Dillingham, 36 in Cold Bay, 39 in Dutch Harbor, 30 in Shemya, 35 in St. Paul, and 37 there in Ketchikan.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the flying weather for Wednesday morning, we'll be watching a system pull through the mainland and split apart essentially in the Gulf and pass through the Panhandle. Otherwise, another system comes into the Aleutians and slowly drifts eastward, showing up over the west coast over the next couple of days. But otherwise, IFR conditions through the midsection of the mainland, and that spreads down into the northern Gulf and portions of the Panhandle. Otherwise, marginal conditions out along the North Slope Arctic coast with low ceilings and patchy freezing fog. Otherwise, some IFR conditions out there in the Aleutians and Bering Sea. For Wednesday afternoon, as that system comes apart, IFR conditions through the midsection there, and IFR conditions over the Panhandle. Otherwise, some areas of marginal conditions through the mainland and down through the northeast Gulf Coast, and marginal conditions out along the North Slope and Arctic coast. And again, as that system moves eastward through the Aleutians, Bering Sea, IFR conditions associated with that system. For Thursday afternoon, again, lingering IFR conditions in the interior Otherwise, marginal conditions spread throughout much of the mainland and along the North Slope Arctic coast, and IFR conditions there now through the eastern Aleutians and portions of the eastern Bering Sea, and some improving conditions down there in the Panhandle with an area of IFR conditions, otherwise marginal conditions down there. And lastly, for Thursday afternoon, some marginal conditions scattered throughout the interior and southwest, otherwise some marginal conditions out along the Arctic coast and North Slope, and some IFR conditions through the eastern Aleutians and eastern Bering Sea, and marginal conditions out through much of the Aleutians. For past conditions on Wednesday, Anaktuvuk, VFR, otherwise marginal along the North Slope there. Same for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, but improving to marginal. And then rainy IFR, windy IFR as well. Isabel, marginal conditions. Mentasta, marginal. Tanita, IFR, but improving to marginal. Portage, IFR, hoping to improve to marginal, again for Wednesday. And Chilkoot, marginal and coming down to IFR conditions. Freezing level, surface freezing level cutting across southern Panhandle into the Gulf and out through the Alaska Peninsula and into the central Bering. Have to get into the Gulf and Pacific to get some elevated freezing levels. Ice conditions for Wednesday. There was an extensive area between the Panhandle and out through the YK Delta with isolated moderate, but also some considerable moderate with between 5 and 10,000 feet there, especially over the Panhandle. Otherwise, below 5,000 feet out there in the central Aleutians. For the jet stream on Wednesday, ridge of high pressure in the Pacific Ocean, otherwise 160 knot jet just south of Kodiak Island, otherwise 125 to 135 knots coming across the southern Panhandle. And northern end of the Panhandle, probably anywhere between 70 and 80 knots there. And as you get into the southern mainland, winds generally from the west with between 50 and 60 knots there, and into the central Aleutians with the pocket of 90 to 105 knots coming across in a southwesterly fashion. For 9,000 foot winds on Wednesday, weak low pressure there near the Seward Peninsula, otherwise 45 knots coming across from the west along the southern mainland. And as you get into the Panhandle, winds continue out of the west, anywhere between 40 and 45 knots there. And there's that pocket of stronger winds in the central Aleutians up to 70 knots there. For 3,000 foot winds on Wednesday, there's that weak low pressure system near the Norton Sound region, otherwise light and variable across the southern mainland, across just south of the Brooks Range, winds generally from the east at 40 knots there and along the north slope as well. And as you get into the Aleutians, there we see that pocket of higher winds, 65 to 70 knots there. Lastly, for turbulence below 6,000 feet up there in the northwest and into the Brooks Range below 6,000 feet, with considerable moderate areas, and below 4,000 feet in the YK Delta, and below 3,000 feet with isolated severe in the central Aleutians, and some pockets of isolated to moderate.
Leatherbacks are the largest turtles on Earth, growing up to 7 feet long and weighing more than 2,000 pounds. These sea turtles are among the most highly migratory animals on Earth, some traveling up to 10,000 miles a year between their nesting and feeding grounds. Prevalent in every ocean except the Arctic and Antarctic, the species overall is declining, more so in the Pacific. In the eastern Pacific, the Mexican population was once thought to be the largest in the world and has experienced an alarming decline.
This trajectory of decline that we've seen and actually collapse. We're talking about only 20 or 30 turtles nesting every year, where thousands used to just 40 years ago. That's the kind of dramatic decline.
The western Pacific population has been declining steadily, and it's particularly critical to act now before it collapses, while there are enough turtles in nests to respond to conservation measures. but threats to all leatherbacks in the Pacific need to be addressed.
The top threats to populations are uncontrolled coastal development, all the bad stuff on the nesting beaches, egg harvest, poaching of the females, predation on the eggs by dogs and pigs. Deforestation makes the sand too warm and dry and the eggs don't hatch. Another one is incidental capture in fishing gear. During their vast migrations, they get caught in fishing gear throughout the Pacific. And finally, marine debris, which the leatherbacks mistake for their favorite food, jellyfish, and they choke on those.
Protecting leatherbacks in U.S. waters alone is not enough to ensure the continued existence of the species. The highly migratory nature of Pacific leatherbacks requires cooperation and international collaboration. NOAA is focusing on partnerships with Mexico, Central America, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific.
Our action plan promotes a holistic recovery strategy that addresses all the sources of mortality. So that's basically ensuring that the remaining nesting sites are protected and the nests produce as many hatchlings as possible. And then secondly, in tandem with that, is reducing the fisheries-related mortalities. We're working with international partners to incentivize community participation on the nesting beach conservation and developing alternative livelihood programs that wean communities off leatherback resources and introduce alternative methods for food and income. Recovery is going to take a long time, on the order of 20 to 30 years at least, before we see some of these actions bear fruit. But here in the US, we can all help leatherbacks by making seafood choices, for instance, that support sustainable fishing practices. And beachgoers can certainly do their part by keeping our oceans clean of plastic debris, picking up marine litter, particularly plastic bags.
Together with our partners, we are strengthening protection and conservation efforts to ensure a future for leatherbacks, helping them to survive and once again thrive in the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
For over 40 years, NOAA scientists have been collecting data and piecing together the story of the gray whale. Each year, new discoveries are made, revealing the secrets of this ancient traveler. With the northeastern Pacific population recovered, leading scientists from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center continue their research efforts to help save the western population from extinction. The most effective way to identify individuals and count the population is to photograph them from the surface. Using the gray whale's distinctive markings and gray spots caused by parasites on their skin, scientists document these characteristics to identify individuals.
So we're able to track migratory pathways and corridors by the simple use of photo identification. There are other ways to do that as well, biopsy sampling and genetics.
And from the air.
Aerial photography is one way you can study animals based on their size and shape. So you can learn a lot about nutritive and reproductive condition of whales just by measuring their size and shape from vertical aerial photographs.
You can also put satellite transmitters on them and track them remotely. You put the transmitter on and let them go, and you watch them move across the Pacific or down to China or wherever it might be.
To further learn and discover where these great sojourners swim, the team of researchers traveled to Russia and set up camp on Sakhalin Island.
The main focus of our research while we were on Sakhalin was to collect photo identification. If it was a whale that we had not collected a genetic sample from previously, we would also attempt to collect a sample from the whales.
Whereas whales are endowed with natural insulation, their human observers must gear up to brave the cold in order to study these marine giants up close.
We're typically only able to work about 1/3 of the time that we're there, and that's mostly due to this fog that just invades the area and sits sometimes for weeks on end. So it can be very challenging to try and do field work in this site.
Recently, 2 whales from the western population surprised scientists by migrating across the Pacific to the waters of California and Mexico.
It's a really fun finding. It's added another piece to the puzzle that we didn't previously know about. And I would have to say that it's opened up more questions than we had before.
Research scientists from Japan, Russia, and the United States share images of animals they've spotted.
We take a photograph of an individual off of Sakhalin Island, and we get a phone call from Japanese scientists, and they say, hey, guess what? We've got a picture of a gray whale in Japan. We say, can you send it to us? We'd love to try and match it. They'll send us the picture, we'll compare it to our catalog, and we'll say, hey, we've got a match from Sakhalin to Japan.
Unlike many species of whales that still remain on the endangered species list, the eastern Pacific gray whale, once on the brink of extinction, now numbers about 20,000 individuals. Recovery efforts that started 40 years ago and the ongoing research and monitoring by NOAA scientists have contributed to the conservation of the gray whales. Together, with legal protection and public education, scientists are playing their part to ensure the survival of this magnificent migratory animal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the marine forecast, starting with the ice edge, we do have some shore-fast ice along much of the coastal areas along the west, and we also have some pretty good development of ice in the Cook Inlet region. And lastly, with northerly flow developing once again, especially over the weekend, we expect the ice to move further south, especially filling in along the northern Bering there. Wednesday's marine forecast for southeast, inside waters, looking at winds generally from a variable direction, 10 to 20 with seas as high as 4 feet. Outside waters, winds generally from the south or southeast at 25, seas as high as 10 feet. And for Thursday, southeast marine forecast, winds generally from the north and the inside waters, 20 to 35, seas as high as 7 feet there in the Lynn Canal. Outside waters, winds generally from a westerly direction to 20, with seas as high as 10 feet. For south central, Wednesday's marine forecast for the Gulf region, winds in variable direction 15 to 20, with seas as high as 9 feet. And for Prince William Sound, winds generally from the north at 15, seas as high as 2 feet. Cook Inlet region, winds generally from the north at 10 to 20, with seas as high as 5 feet in the central Cook Inlet. For Thursday's marine forecast, south central, for the Gulf region, winds generally from a northeasterly direction, 15 to 20, seas as high as 8 feet. And Prince William Sound, winds generally from the northeast at 15, seas as high as 3 feet. For the Cook Inlet, winds continue out of the north at 10 to 20 with seas as high as 3 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, winds around Kodiak Island generally from the north at 15, seas as high as 9 feet, south side of the Kodiak Island region. And for the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from the north at 15, seas as high as 10 feet. And for the north side of the peninsula, winds generally from a variable direction at 10, seas as high as 5 feet in the open water areas. And for Thursday, winds around Kodiak Island generally from a easterly direction to 10, seas as high as 6 feet. And south side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from the southerly direction at 20, seas as high as 7 feet. And for the north side of the peninsula, winds generally from the easterly direction at between 20 and 25, and seas as high as 8 feet. For the Aleutian Chain, looking at winds generally from a southerly direction in the central and eastern portions of the Aleutians, anywhere from 20 to 40 miles per hour. with seas as high as 18 feet. We'll be looking at small craft advisories out there for the western Aleutians. Winds generally from the westerly direction, 30 to 40, with seas as high as 23 feet. And for Thursday, Aleutian chain, winds generally from a westerly direction from 25 to 30, with seas as high as 18 feet there between Shimei and Kiska. For the west coast, Wednesday's marine forecast, winds from a variable direction, 15 to 30, with seas as high as 11 feet just south of St. Matthew Island. For Thursday, marine forecast, looking at winds generally from a easterly direction, 30 to 35, with seas as high as 15 to 16 around the Pribs and just south of St. Matthew Island. For the Arctic coast, just off the Arctic coast there, Beaufort Sea coast, winds generally from the east at 15 to 20, down through the Chukchi Sea coast, winds generally from a easterly direction, 30 to 35, and down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from a northerly direction, 25 to 30. For the Arctic coast on Thursday, Arctic coast, Beaufort Sea coast, winds generally from a northerly direction, 15 to 20. Chukchi Sea coast, winds generally from a northeasterly direction, 30 to 35, and down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from the northerly direction, 30 to 35. For tonight's weather, we're going to be seeing a weakening includer front down through the southwest and extending into the Kenai Peninsula, northern Gulf region, with a trouble point there, 1001 millibar low there, with snow showers out through the Kenai Peninsula into the YK Delta, fog in the eastern interior, ice fog along the Arctic coast, and next system coming into the Bering Sea Aleutians with a 968 millibar low there. And for Wednesday, that low transitions further west in the Bering Sea, 991 millibar low, and a low approaches the...
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.